Philip and Miranda, welcome to the University of Canterbury MBA Masterclass series. It's a real pleasure for me to have the opportunity to chat to you, particularly given the iconic status of the business you started, Philip. So I want to take you back to the beginning and ask you to share with us, how did the idea come to you, and just share with us your journey.
I was invited to go into business with a English relative who was familiar with Cyprus, where he'd been born and raised, and he was managing a large agriculture business, and we ended up deciding, or he invited me to assist him in establishing a mushroom farm in Cyprus. The farm was established in 1968, and between 1968 and 1974 it emerged as a substantial business. It was a new dietary expectation in the region, coincided with the dramatic expansion of Northern European tourism into the Eastern Mediterranean, and of course the oil boom, and we ended up with a significant business that employed 130, 150 people, and exporting around the Gulf states to the Lebanon and of course into Greece and the local market. So by 1974 it was a usefully significant business, and then of course it was the island was invaded by the Turks, or the intercommunal squabbling that then took place. The farm was heavily fought over, and the business the business was destroyed. In the meantime, and 2 years prior to that, we had established, this once again myself and my partner, a operation in New Zealand, and the New Zealand business was small, struggling, and obviously not in the same league as the Cypriot operation. However, of course, with the demolition of the farm in Cyprus, the New Zealand operation became the sole reason for continuing to grow mushrooms. My partner, my English partner, then of course migrated to New Zealand, as indeed did our senior management, and that became the foundation of Meadow Mushrooms. And success is very much a reality of right place, right time, right product, and mushrooms were not really part of the New Zealand diet at that stage. It was strictly a seasonal vegetable, if that's the word you want to use, and so the farm really has been a continuous growth story as mushrooms become an integral part of the New Zealand diet, and it has obviously expanded and developed from that rather absurd and ridiculous birth pains.
Philip, you used a very interesting adjective there, or two, utterly absurd. But what I'm hearing is somebody who is able to identify an opportunity, and in that opportunity, or you brought into that opportunity a spirit of innovation, a spirit of entrepreneurship. Where did that come from?
Well, I think that's a very fair question. The reality, of course, is that many people have many ideas, and most of them will fail. And logically, this clearly was rather more absurd than many. But I think you do deal with the fact of life that probably luck is the most important single ingredient that you need for commercial success. So when you say you have the right product, right time, right place, you're reflecting on the fact that all your assumptions can actually be made to work. And clearly you have to work very hard, you have to have a lot of, as I say once again, luck. I mean, I do emphasize the word. It's great to have an idea, and clearly not many ideas succeed.
Yeah.
But on this occasion, it certainly was the foundation of a significant business, And you, of course, then have to be at the front end of the technology. You have to respect the reality that you've got continuous change. If there's one reality of in a commercial life, it's that it's continuously evolving and changing, and you never stop the clock. You make a point of being in the vanguard of the technology that's emerging, and mushrooms are no different to anything else. In fact, in their own way, they're probably more so, meaning that you probably have as a reality a greater factor of change as you manage new technologies than, frankly, many other vegetables. But to presume that technology only applies to intellectual property and so on and so forth is so wrong. The technology changes in agriculture, horticulture. Every bit is demanding, and if you are going to survive, you really have to be continuously innovative at every level.
Yeah.
And I mean, simply without that, you are going to be obsolete really very quickly.
Yeah. Miranda, Meadow Mushrooms, as I've heard from Philip, it's had a fantastic journey. It's a journey of innovation. Every time I walk into the supermarket, I can only, identify it's an iconic brand. What do you think is the secret of this intergenerational success?
I don't think there's ever a silver bullet, so there's not one secret. I'd probably add on to those comments to say one of the differences is Meadows was started as a business, not a job. Yeah. So the commitment to building a business has been throughout. There is absolutely luck, but it was bad luck that there was an invasion of Cyprus and the entire site was bombed and is now Green Line territory. Yes. It was good luck that they had, and foresight that Roger and Dad had established a building and a business in New Zealand very young at the stage, and at the time no one was particularly interested in the idea of mushrooms being part of a year-round diet. So hard work and a commitment to actually building a business, not trying to extract, I suppose, early returns and create a job is a really to me, that's one of the biggest differences. And then because of that, there's always been I suppose it's a little bit like when people talk about kaitiakitanga. From our perspective, we are a long-term play. We're there for the long term, and so you're investing for the long term. So you're thinking about what the business is going to need in the future and therefore committing to it. And part of that is looking at the market and the innovation that has been so inherent in what we've done, whether it's the automation that we've put into the sheds, whether it's the change of growing techniques. It's a very simple business that's very complex if you don't get it right. So it's a real commitment to staying at the vanguard of technology and making sure that what we're doing is actually going to take us forward and set us up for the future.
I wonder if you are perhaps being a rather modest, Philip and Miranda. You talk about luck, but I've been impressed by how you've combined a sense of business success, keeping your eye on the future, but at the same time you've had this extraordinary commitment to public service in New Zealand, and that shines through. How do you see both sides of Meadow Mushrooms, iconic brand, successful business, but from what I encounter, two individuals, two business leaders who have a strong sense of commitment to our community and to public service as well.
But I think clearly you do want to be part of society. Clearly you are motivated both in principle and ideologically. And clearly in my case, when I was invited to consider standing for Parliament, in this case the National Party, it was a very conscious decision that one would involve, and you certainly are driven by your own personal beliefs that clearly matter to you, and they clearly represent an idealistic ambition, in my case quite clearly a respect for the rights of the individual and the entitlement of and responsibility of the individual for his or her own contribution to society, while at the same time respecting a broader humanity and concern for the reality of in this case, a complex multi-ethnic society. So you are driven by a combination of opportunity and idealistic ambition. And in my time, the debates were very real. We obviously had a very real debate over the emancipation, the extreme free market dynamic that was introduced into this country in 1984, and a opening up of the economy, which I supported. But in my case, I was clearly to the left of the ideological debate in the National Party, and felt that we had to manage a transition from a heavily regulated, controlled economy to a deregulated free market economy. So all these dynamics were part of a complex process that was both part of my motivation and my reason for being in politics. Clearly, in globalization terms, my commitment to the ambition of free trade and so on and so forth was very much the reason for my involvement in the GATT negotiations. And clearly you are, for very obvious reasons, seeing a bit of a rebellion against globalization and a return to a far more, I should say, insulated and fragmented global new order, if the word you want to use, is reflected, of course, in the most recent American elections. But my rather complex answer to your question is that you are, as a personality, driven by a broader picture than simply commercial success. And probably you've got to be very lucky to have the opportunity and the time to engage in a wider field. Yes. Otherwise you are, of course, a prisoner of a small business reality of nose to the grindstone, and you don't necessarily have the time or the money to leave your business, or the fact having a business big enough to have its own corporate management outside of family control. So we were lucky enough to have scale, lucky enough to be able to have a executive team that were self-motivating and internally accountable, as opposed to the reality of a one-man band and or the limitations of a small business.
I'm interested in learning more about the brand Meadow Mushrooms in a time where marketing and branding is a complex matter, especially with social media. Miranda, how do you see, how did the name come about, Philip, and then perhaps how you see the brand today?
The brand Meadows came about for no particular, I think it was just, it wasn't a very complex conversation or decision made in the early 1970s. It was literally the original brand didn't work, and thinking about what was appropriate in the way you think about mushrooms. However, since that time, the great irony is Meadow Mushrooms are perceived as a brand to represent the fact that mushrooms grow in meadows, and they'll be found in some pristine corner of the South Island, all growing in a beautiful meadow. Whereas the reality is that we're a highly technical, intensive farming operation that's a vertical farm and has been a vertical farm since before they were trendy. But the question around the brand and what we do in the market has always been a big one for us. So we have national distribution and national scale, and that gives us an opportunity to really try and drive all the aspects of a brand that are important. So encourage people to have the trust and the faith and the confidence around how our products are grown and what they can expect when they pick up a packet of Meadows. And that's really important to us. We promise quality and we promise excellence in what we deliver. And then we look at how we can encourage people to consume mushrooms and try new ways of eating mushrooms and learn more about mushrooms. And that, I suppose, is where we've taken something of a leadership role in New Zealand, definitely in the packaged goods and fresh produce. Very few people think about packaging as opposed to labelling in produce. It's one of the great failures of that segment of the supermarket. If packaging is about explaining to people what they're eating and telling the story and communicating the benefits, labelling doesn't really do that, and more often than not that's what we see. So as the market evolves, we've tried to answer the questions that our customers are asking us and our consumers, and we've tried to evolve the products to deliver an easier solution, whether it's a sliced product or evolving into different types of mushrooms over the years. But all of it comes from being market-led and listening to what our consumers and our customers are asking for and thinking about how we can keep adapting. I think over the past 20 or so years, we've gone from a plastic punnet, for example. We went from loose mushrooms for everything and just white buttons. When I came in, we launched into brown portobellos and into brown buttons. We then took our plastic punnets, which were the global norm, and found a way to create cardboard punnets that were, at the time, seemed like the best solution both for the product and the consumer. We then recently completed a life cycle analysis to identify the optimal packaging for the product and again in the market from an environmental perspective, and RPET, because of basically the rules and regulations and the capability in New Zealand to dispose and recycle the product, the plastic. So now we've introduced RPET into the market instead of the cardboard. It came, strangely, RPET is better than environmentally more sustainable than cardboard. And all of these initiatives are about just continuing to evolve with the information that we have on hand and what the market is looking for.
I think you should probably explain what RPET means.
RPET is literally recycled PET. It's a journey. It's a journey with the brand and how we build what that brand means to people and making sure it connects into what people are actually solves problems for people.
And what I'm hearing is innovation, technology, but really importantly, sustainability coming through.
Absolutely. But sustainability is a funny one. So sustainability in its broader sense is going to be ESG, so environmental, social and governance, people, planet, profit. Yes. I think what people mean most of the time they talk about sustainability is environmental sustainability. We'd probably say we focus on all of them. So
multidimensional.
Oh, it has to be multidimensional. If there is no profit, there is no business. If we don't look after our people and do a good job by our community, then it's not where everyone wants to work, and we want people to actually be part of the team and enjoy coming to work. And the third part about that is obviously the environment, and that we're here for the long term. You know, farming, by inherently we're thinking about our environment, and mushrooms are one of the most sustainable products. We use hundreds of thousands of tons of byproduct, whether it's straw or chicken manure in the peat. We then grow mushrooms on it and put it back in the land. Yeah. We grow 35 hectares over a 15 hectare site by using vertical farming, so everything we do is very environmentally friendly. Yeah. So it's how we make sure that as a business we're a good contributor to the economy, and our community is a really fundamental part of how we operate.
Yes, it sounds to me that you invented the concept of the triple bottom line, just listening to you.
Invented maybe a slight overstatement, but we do buy into the concept.
Well, clearly, evidently.
It raises, I think it's a good model to challenge how you think about your business. And as people think about the stakeholder engagement and involvement, it just forces you to think differently about what the future looks like and what you need to, the pieces of the puzzle you need to line up.
You refer to listening to the market quite closely on a continuous basis. And Philip, just thinking back to how it all started, you mentioned that at the time mushrooms were not part of the New Zealand diet. So how do you listen to the market so closely and so cleverly?
Sometimes well and sometimes not. Basically, it's predominantly human interaction and following what people are doing. So you can use all the traditional methods such as consumer research, given we're discussing this within the context of a business school conversation.
Yes. And one that has a top marketing department.
There we go.
Yeah.
So all the consumer research methods are valid and useful, but also I don't think anything beats physically being in market and spending time with consumers and customers, and not always, and actually just listening. People will, especially in the day and age of social media, trends are very apparent, and they're apparent quite quickly, and understanding how people are seeing things and what's working. And there's a big difference between a consumer and a customer in our context. Our customers are the supermarkets, the retailers, the greengrocers, the food service audience, whereas our consumers are the you and me who go shopping every day and eat the mushrooms. So we may work with chefs associations, or we may work direct with consumers and influencers. There's lots of different ways that we interact, but actually there's no one way, again, that I would interact with them or listen to what's going on. It's just actually paying attention and finding ways to engage and understand what's happening in the market.
You've had an extraordinary business journey, and there have been many awards and accolades along the way. One of them is the EY Family Business of Excellence Award. Families, by their very nature, have all the joys of being a family, but can often be quite challenging. How have you navigated a family business with a corporate structure?
I'm going to jump in because I would say it comes down to the people who are passing on to the next generation.
I want to hear this answer.
Huh?
I want to hear this answer.
Yeah. Well, I think it's relatively unusual that there is a very conscious effort to pass on from one generation to another, and willingness to let go, because I can tell you confidently we make mistakes, but everyone makes mistakes. And so something that I think Dad was very concerted in was his efforts to say, over to you. And that has applied to both my sisters and myself. So we wear the mantle.
Well, I mean, it's a very good question. The reality of entrepreneurship is that the founder frequently suffocates the next generation,
Yes.
and the business begins to, frankly, disappear, fail as he or she gets older, and fails to respond to changes, and all the dynamics of obviously a modern economy, indeed modern business. So it's enormously important that you put in place a structure that empowers the next generation, and that you frankly abdicate your personalized control or involvement and become simply a more than a shareholder, but respect the fact that the next generation have taken ownership and have an ambition for the business and the preservation, frankly, of their own wealth. It does presuppose that the next generation have a congenial relationship and can get along, etc. And probably it's extremely important that in this process of transfer, it is not a case of going straight into the business. I think it's enormously important that the next generation have outside experience, that they have their own lives that they have established, and that they have the maturity and the capacity to work together, and the ambition to continue to treat the business as of importance to them, always driven, one must accept, by the financial imperative that it's an enormous privilege to have a serious wealth, and it's an enormous privilege to have the independence of one's own decision making. and it may be very unfair as a sort of commentary on society, but at the end of it all, money is both freedom and the opportunity to clearly, of course, contribute in a broader sense, and also to preserve your own status and authority to contribute to society.
Reflecting on how you've scaled, how you've turned the business into a national business, you talked about exports and so forth. It's one of the observations is that Canterbury in particular is an economy of small businesses, and what we need is for more of our small businesses to scale up. Any kind of quick lessons you would share other than the ones you've already shared?
I do think intent is fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
In New Zealand, we often seem to either build something that enables us to target our boat batch and whatever else, and it's a job, and we don't necessarily aspire to build long-lasting businesses. And once you have built a business, the first thing people say is, are you going to sell it? So most recently we started a business, and it was really people were trying to get us to exit before we even got the thing going. So I think you have to be committed to it and go into this for the long haul, and you see far more multi-generational businesses overseas than you do here. We don't seem to have the same ambition to build that longevity, and that determines your capital allocation, it determines your investment decisions, it determines how you structure the business and your expectations. And to come back to the point around how we achieve a multi-generational family business, it wasn't a right. It was the business has got to be able to stand on its own, and we need to have earned the right to be in there. And so I think setting standards and having high expectations is a really fundamental part of that. Not taking a very short-term view.
Yes.
All of those things contribute.
And I think there's one other factor. Because we're a small, insulated, isolated economy of only 5 million, to actually have a product that has the capacity for scale is easier said than done. And the reality that, as you rightly say, Christchurch is probably an extreme example of a huge number of small businesses. But the capacity to scale a business is very difficult. The product has to be appropriate, and there really are remarkably few opportunities that actually lend themselves to the kind of scale that clearly, of course, we have been lucky enough to achieve, as well as the reality of a highly insular community, fragmented geography.
Geographically distant.
People are very happy, by and large, in Christchurch to settle for a quality of life that represents a obviously confined local market, and the remarks you innocently hear about the quality of life. You can obviously enjoy the outdoors, you can have your house or whatever, at Akaroa. So the temptation to settle for a softer option in a place like Christchurch is not a criticism, it's simply a danger that can frustrate a broader commercial ambition.
One of the words that we often talk about and refer to, given our experience here in Christchurch, is resilience. And when you talk about the commitment to the long term, inevitably you go through the down cycles. What has been behind your business resilience?
It's an interesting question. I think intent or purpose. So if you
and
know what
remaining focused on that.
Yeah, absolutely. If you know what you're working towards, you can deal with the bumps in the road. If all you're aiming for is the first corner, then each of the subsequent ones seem harder. So to have a bigger goal and a bigger aim, It's also finding the way to, resilience is all about how you recover and keep going.
Yes.
So you need to create that environment personally, but also in the business. It's got to be able to deal with what have been some pretty big bumps in the last
We've had the
15 years, and we've had a couple of earthquakes or 3.
Yes.
We've had floods, we've had fires, we've had a pandemic. We've had some pretty horrible things that have affected our community in this last decade, and really directly affected our community. And it is knowing why we exist. It's also having a good support network. There's many things that support resilience, but I think it's a really important part if you are starting a business. And more often than not, people underestimate how long it takes to get to what they view as success. Most overnight successes I'm aware of are 9 or 10 years old, and then they start to hit their straps. So giving yourself, knowing you're in for a marathon, not a sprint. It's not a 2 years and we're done. I think all of those things are important. So having having your North Star set at a level that is realistic, and then planning to achieve that and over a time frame that's realistic.
I think the other point you must always bear in mind that the danger of complacency in a place like New Zealand is pretty real. You must continuously benchmark yourself against the best international practice, regardless of what you're doing. So to have your senior staff continuously aware of international trends and recognise that however comfortable your business may be because of a dominant market position, that is no insulation against the reality of a potential competitor.
But it's also, to your question around resilience, it's also stimulation. Because, one of the points around starting a business or sustaining a business is remaining excited about that business. And if you are too insular, then inherently, you're missing out on what's happening in the world. We have the opportunity to take the best and be better. And that's our challenge. But we've got to make sure that our eyes are above the gutter and we're seeing what's happening in the world. And that's a real opportunity when you're somewhere like Christchurch.
I also think, given what you're talking about with in a family business, generational obsolescence is something you have to be astonishingly aware of, that you're locked in the time warp of your own values and attitudes. And so you really have got to continuously regenerate with new ideas, and the family have got to do more than simply repeat what may have been their parental experience.
That speaks to an open-mindedness and a willingness to embrace change, Philip, and that's something that many of us struggle with, change. Any thoughts about or reflections about how you've stayed at the front end of change? What kind of attributes?
Well, I think, okay, fine. The reality, of course, is that I've had a very diverse life. And clearly, of course, politics was a significant involvement for many years. But I think fundamental is you certainly at our scale, you have to have extremely good management, and obviously with no direct family executive involvement for many, many years, the importance of a senior management team that has been promoted on merit and merit only, and that of course is always a danger of a family business, that the family who are not initially qualified become obviously enjoy an executive role that both suffocates and frustrates the ability of the business to continue to be innovative and at the front end of whatever their particular ambition is. So my careful answer to your question is that you have to be extremely careful about seeing that you have a highly motivated management team. I think one of the strengths of our business is by and large that the family are non-executive or have been substantially non-executive. Therefore you have promotion strictly based on personal merit as opposed to any kind of family privilege. but that doesn't necessarily apply. But if you are going to have that particular management structure, you have to have an extremely engaged board. Otherwise, you're going to have executive capture, and that in turn can be similarly dangerous. So my careful answer to your question is that the family have got to be heavily involved, but at the same time, they also must be very jealous of promoting on merit, and seeing that you have obviously highly engaged and highly competent people at the senior levels of your company. But in turn, of course, requires scale, and it's not easy to get scale in a small economy like New Zealand.
You've mentioned the importance of excellence in management, and it's one of the conversations we often have in the business school, but also in our engagement with businesses. The challenge of selecting the right talent and making sure that there is a commitment to the purpose, the intent of the business. Any thoughts you could share from your experience on how you select?
Selecting talent's a really interesting question in this country. My experience is we tend to be very narrow in how we think about things. They've got to be exactly the right diameter to fit in the perfect hole. Actually, you're looking for an attitude and a commitment and an excitement and a curiosity about what they're doing. Absolutely, there's some baseline skills when you're talking about senior management that they need to bring in, but you also have to foster those skills. So I think it's about finding the right attitude, the right value fit, particularly in a business like ours, which remains a family business, and then so attitude, values, and then capability, and then looking at how they're going to benefit and prosper in the job. Because something that the hardest thing about it, we have got scale, but we're a medium-sized organisation. There's not 15 different marketing roles you're going to, or 8 different, sales roles. So you need to have a pathway for people, and you can see how they will be developed and challenged and stimulated, and how they fit within the group. And it's really about just triangulating those different pieces. And sometimes it's very hard to find the right people, and sometimes you find amazing people. We have been really lucky. I think that's one of the attributes, and it's probably been, having a very high level of engagement with the shareholders, who are actually very happy to let management do their job, but are actively interested and curious, and everyone is driving towards the same end game, and that's very helpful. If we were an organisation that was, had the sort of politics you often do in corporates, it would be a completely different mindset. But I'm sure that helps.
If I am an aspirant, somebody's aspiring to do what you've done, starting out my business, any kind of pearls of wisdom from your experience, Philip, that you would share with me?
Well, you should not underemphasize the significance of luck in whatever decision you make. And clearly, the insanity of establishing a business in the Middle East, in Cyprus, was by any logical standard absolutely insane. Clearly, the reality of the Turkish invasion and the farm being heavily fought over with a serious number of casualties was what you would describe as bad luck. Once again, issues far outside of, frankly, my control, then dictated the commitment to New Zealand, and that was probably, in all due respects, a very lucky decision that the Turks invaded Cyprus, and that one became utterly committed to New Zealand as opposed to whatever expansion plans we may have dreamt of in the Middle East and Europe. So the right product, right time, right place, and the commitment to New Zealand became in itself, of course, a decision, but in all due respects a very lucky decision. And I'm very conscious of, digressing briefly, the longitudinal study that was done by Phil Silver of 1,000 people, and asking him what he thought was the single most important determinant of the success or failure of their respective lives. And he said 50% of it's luck, right place, right time, right health or good health, and all the variables that are part and parcel, frankly, of our lives. And in our case, of course, the earthquake didn't affect the business, and coincidentally, we weren't destroyed by at this stage a disease, and mushrooms as a organism is, of course, enormously prone to a lot of complications, which, of course, we're more informed about now. But over the first 20 years of the business, could easily have gone sour. So, I mean, I hear your question, but I really and truly would never underestimate the significance of luck with the qualification that is, I mean, you still hard work, engagement, commitment, prerequisites, but without luck, no, it's not going to help.
But it is, I agree with that, but I do think you can't underestimate the hard work. Yes. But you also can't underestimate the vision and the need to look forward. Yes. So I think one of the things, if I look back on the business, that the founders and subsequently we have done well is to look forward as to where we're going and be prepared for the next stage rather than getting stuck in the here and now.
Speaking of looking forward, Miranda, how do you see the next challenge or the future?
So the last time I sat down and did a film was the day we went into lockdown. And the question I got asked at the end,
was this
I was literally being filmed, and the question was, have you had any challenges? And we were trying to understand whether we were closing down with 500 staff, having no work. So there will always be challenges. And I think the future is just continuing to grow and do a great job at what we do. Yeah. And, you know, as has already been said, the only constant is change. Yeah. So how do you continue to evolve? How do you continue to grow? Growth in a small market will always be one of the biggest challenges. So we need to always be the best at what we do. That's our challenge when you are large in a market, is to continue to excel and not become complacent. And so those are all the things we're grappling with and will continue to grapple with.
I mean, I think you must accept that, I mean, there are limits to a particular product. So obviously a company like ours will continue to diversify and expand within the fresh food, vegetable sector. And obviously we have serious dairy involvements. And so I mean, you don't stop the clock. Yeah. You innovation at every level, both product-wise and indeed perhaps sector-wise.
As I've listened to you, Miranda and Philip, I'm reminded that in all our lives we have challenges, but what often distinguishes the successful, the excellent, the most resilient is when you are able to see opportunities amidst a crisis or a challenge, and evidently you have that attribute. So it's been an enormous privilege for me to have this opportunity to learn more about your journeys, and especially through your eyes, Miranda, to start thinking about the future and how you've stayed at the front end of innovation and technological innovation in particular, whilst you understand your context and its changing nature. Thank you so much, Philip and Miranda, for sharing your journeys.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.